Christmas from everyone at Arbury School.
The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
Pastor Mai, good afternoon. Welcome to Wednesday's Mannin Line, lunchtime on the Isle of Man. Open line through till 1. Call 66 13 68. Text 166 177. WhatsApp on the same number, 166 177. Email studio@manxradio.com. If you're WhatsApping, by the way, you'll need us in your contacts. Of course, with WhatsApps, you can send so much more. You can send photos, and you can send voice messages as well. You can almost send sandwiches. The choice is yours. Last night, says John in Port Erin, the weather was so bad, Manxman sailings to and from Heysham were cancelled. So imagine our surprise to find food delivered to the shops this morning. Checking on the ship tracking site, we find that the Arrow did a freight run from Heysham in the early hours of the morning. So the weather was too bad for our big new expensive vessel, but not too bad for the smaller Arrow. What do the steam packets say? Is the Manxman unable to sail in weather conditions where the Ben could sail? Of course, on the Steam Packets website, you'll see all sailings between now and Christmas are shown as liable to cancellation. So is the Manxman cancellation situation dependent solely on the weather, or do the numbers of passengers booked and the amount of freight to be shifted influence decisions over the next few days? It's going to be critical for people travelling to and from the Isle of Man to be with families on and across at Christmas. Any chance of more information and less secrecy? Well, the Manxman sailed this morning, but the sailing, as you heard, was cancelled last night, and every crossing between now and Christmas, red flag. It's all red. It's like my old school report. Here's the Steam Packets Managing Director Brian Thompson on what he says to people whose Christmas plans are in turmoil.
I'm extremely sorry for those people. Unfortunately, the weather's just something that we can't control. I've seen all the speculation online that other vessels would have sailed, which from the company's point of view is absolute nonsense. Weather like this would have cancelled any vessel. So we're sorry to those people affected, but really there's very little we can do.
Do we know how many people were expecting to sail between now and Christmas?
We'll have those numbers written down somewhere. I don't have them to hand. But there is a significant number of people due to travel at this time of year, and I think that's a frustration. If it had happened 1 or 2 weeks either side of Christmas, it wouldn't have had such an impact. But we feel for those people because, you know, every member of our staff who's based on the island has felt this disruption personally in their family life as well.
I suppose the question is around contingencies. Is there the possibility that if we see a calm spell, the boat can just go? Is there that ability to scramble in effect?
Yeah, absolutely, and that's one of the good things about the live aboard model that we're trying to move towards, is to have that flexibility. So the vessel, if they're sitting alongside the crew are living and working on board, it's manned 24 hours. It can go at a moment's notice. So we are constantly looking for those windows in the weather, and when we can rearrange sailings. Of course, it's not going to be convenient for everyone, but that's absolutely what we'll do.
And is there any news about freight as well? Are there chances that we could get freight-only sailings going in this time?
So you've probably noticed that the Arrow's been sitting alongside all week, and hopefully she'll pick up some backlog of freight at Heysham, and we'll keep her in the loop as well for the next few days. And any window when she can sail, she'll do that as well. So we're hopeful to be able to bring some freight, and we've spoke to the customers as well, ensuring that we're communicating effectively with the freight customers and with the passengers. I think that's all we can do. As I said, the weather's something we just don't control.
So the people who say the Ben would have sailed, you don't recognise that?
No, they're wrong.
Brian Thompson, Managing Director of the Isle of Man Steam Packet Company. Now, if that weren't enough, a week today, steam packet workers start industrial action short of a strike, which will see members of the Nautilus union, not everybody, but just members of the Nautilus union, only work to their job title and won't carry out any overtime. Okay, Brian Thompson's described the announcement as hugely disappointing, but he believes the union thinks the ferry operator, the steam packet, our company, is an easy target. Gary Elliott is the senior national organiser for Nautilus, the union.
I find that quite disrespectful to his employees, because we're a membership-led organisation that takes into account what our members feel, and it isn't our members or the employees that have made the threat of fire and rehire 3 days before Christmas. This disruption could have been avoided quite easily had he maintained the consultation, negotiation and utilised arbitration as contained within the collective bargaining agreement.
So what is Nautilus hoping to get out of the industrial action? Because the steam packet says it doesn't think the current action will have that much impact. So is this symbolic rather than expecting a rethink?
Well, again, it's Nautilus as a professional organisation and a trade union that's been representing seafarers for 160 years and having a lot of members that operate on lifeline services, finding a way to try and get the company, the employer, back round the table for negotiations and consultation. We didn't close down that process. The employer closed down that process. We're quite happy to move to arbitration. The employer isn't. So they need to really rethink what their thoughts are on maintaining that consultation and negotiation. The ballot is indicative of previous consultation, and what it's showing to the company is there is a loss of trust and confidence in the employer. You can't threaten your employees 3 days before Christmas with the threat of dismissal and a sacking that will take effect on the 1st of January.
So it's a week today, 6 o'clock, a week today. At 6 p.m, Nautilus industrial action will actually begin. As the owner, by the way, of the steam packet, if you're a taxpayer, and even if you're not, you're in on this, how do you feel about this? Could this have been handled any better, or is this just, are we a victim of circumstance where that's concerned? I mean, as in coming in between the management and the members of the Nautilus Union. And by the way, do you have any friends or relatives who are coming back to the Isle of Man for Christmas and New Year? Just wonder what the atmosphere is like there and what their contingency plans are. I mean, Christmas dinner in the Holiday Inn in Lancaster won't be, well, it won't be what they'll expect. So any thoughts on this? And perhaps you're heading off, or you've got friends who are heading off to the UK and beyond for Christmas and the New Year. Difficult, isn't it? And we don't know. And obviously Mr. Thompson says the Ben McCree wouldn't have gone in this weather. Well, it's immaterial at the moment because she's got a hole in her and she wouldn't be here anyway. The Lady of Man used to sail in some pretty hairy weather. Obviously, those days are gone now. Lady of Man couldn't carry any big wagons like the Ben McCree and subsequently the Manxman. But thoughts on this? We are in the middle of this. It's the weather. Of course, the weather's something that we just have to deal with all the time. But there is this industrial action that's hanging over us. A note in from Graham who says, does anybody know why Manx Telecom has had no email function for 7 days? When I spoke to them, they said they no longer own the ManxNet platform. An Australian company owned the ManxNet platform. I think that's been the case for a while, but intermittently, the Manx.net does seem to be having a wobble every now and again. I just wonder what the situation is like with you. Eddie's first with us today. Hi, Eddie.
Hiya, Andy, all right?
Good, thanks, yeah.
Yep. My talk for the day, if I may.
Of course, yeah, go on.
Yeah. Prior to doing it, though, yesterday I was on, and shortly after I was on, Bonzo came on, I believe, and he was pointing out my misinformation. And then, of course, after Bonzo came Betty to my rescue. Good on you, Betty. But what I'd like to say to Bonzo is I, for the last 12 months, like a lot of other people, I've just been trying to search for the truth. And most of the things, well, all the things I hope that I actually say are exactly the truth. I wouldn't tell a lie. It's a fact about the French shutting down wind farms. You know, all these things are true. But what I suggest is to everybody I mean, in the last 12 months, I found out that there's two people who I don't believe anymore because of what I found out myself. That's the MUA and the government. So I suggest everybody do exactly the same as I'm doing and find out for themselves, because it's all there if they search for it. Okay, but my point today is about the wind turbines and whether they're green or not. What we've been trying to work out is they have said there's X amount of money for the turbines. I can't remember how many millions it was, but they haven't quite given us a figure to make sure the infrastructure goes in and everything. Well, what we've been thinking is when they get to the top of the slot, they've then got to create a road through into the plantation once that's cut down, which is a temperate rainforest. We don't agree with that, but once they do this, and then they start creating the pads, well, they've got to dig off down to a solid ground. And the ground that they're going to take off is what we know as heathland, but they are now saying it's not. But where they're going to put it, I mean, they don't know the depth of it or anything. So, if there's 400,000 tons of concrete got to go in, I would say that's about the same amount got to come off of the heathland. Where's it going to be taken? Where's it going to be stored and everything? Excuse me. And more to the point is there will be a court battle for sure, even if it's only me that does it, but I think there'll be a lot of people joining in the court battle against the health and so forth about it. But if they are forced to put it back, how on earth are they going to put back? It could be as much as 600,000 tons of heathland, because nobody knows the depth, so you've got to go from between 3 and 7 or 8. It's going to be an absolute nightmare. And just to top that, if they do lose the battle, the court battle, there'll be compensation claims, right? Not long ago, we paid out 2.1 million, was it, to Dr. Ranson? We're going to end up paying tons and tons of money. It's just, in my opinion, and a lot of other people's opinion, it's just an absolute diabolical disaster.
Eddie, who's putting those barriers up? You know, those banners up around. I saw one at the top of Glen Road in Colby yesterday. Who's putting the banners up? The no wind turbines.
Well, we formed a group in the Skird, Ronagh and so forth. I'm not too sure exactly who's put them up exactly, but I would imagine it's our group. Okay. And I mean, that's just the least we can do at the moment, is to try and make people driving past that aware of it. But like I said before, what I want to do is the kids of today, they've got another 3 years. These lot won't care, the government at the moment, because once they've got the pensions, they won't care what happens. But for all the kids of the future and all the people of the future, if anybody cares about the Isle of Man in that government, they will not do this. This is just going to kill the Isle of Man totally. Not just financially, but it will kill the view of the Isle of Man, all the walks, the bio, everything. You name it. Dark skies, the bird life, everything. It's just an absolute ridiculous sort of thought even to put wind farms on land.
Okay. All right, Eddie. Thanks for calling today.
Thanks, Andy.
Good to hear from you. It's 21 minutes past 12 from Eddie to Eddie. Hi, Eddie.
Hi, mate. I'd like to talk about the steam packet and the managing director.
Okay.
He made a statement the other day there that we actually employ 10% of local people. So the other 90% are all subcontracts by shipping people from all over the world. We don't even advertise vacancies in the Isle of Man for the Manx steam packet. I think this is an absolute disgrace, considering that so far we've gone and spent nearly £190 million on this company, and it's supposed to be our company, and we're not even employing local people.
I heard Mr. Thompson say that shipping's an international business, Eddie.
It's not. We are not an international business. We are a local-run company. We're running from the Isle of Man to England. So we're an internal. We're not international. He's used as an escape outfit. You go and look at the Isle of Wight, you go down Dover way, you'll find that nearly all the vessels are employed by local people, except P&O, who went and sacked all their local people, and this is what this guy is trying to do, exactly the same thing.
So,
and if this Manx government allows it, there's an election coming up in a couple of years, and a lot of them are going to find themselves out.
This must have been happening for a while then, if what you say is true. So how come nobody's raised it before?
Well, put it this way. When I sailed in the 60s and the 70s, we had 6 passenger boats and 3 cargo boats. 90% were local men. If you do not advertise the jobs locally, then the people don't get them, do they? They go out to shipping agencies, and they supply them. You've got people from all over the world working on our boats. Germany, many years ago, if they were in internal sailing, they had to be done by German seamen. And we should do the same thing here. If we're going to only be going to do from the Isle of Man to England, then it should be local people, not people from all over the world and cheap labour. Let's forget, this is the main thing. The main thing is we don't know how many hours these people are doing. They're not represented by anybody. You don't know how many hours these people are doing when they're shoved on these boats. And they've got no representation. They can't go to anybody. They can't turn anybody. They sign a contract and that's it. They've got to do that 6 months, whatever it is. So we're making this company, which is supposed to be ours, the people of the Isle of Man, we're making us look like we're, I don't know, I'm ashamed of it, actually.
You think...
I was always proud to say I was a steam packing man, but not anymore.
You think this is bad for our reputation?
Definitely. It's a disgrace. It's an absolute disgrace. This man is hiding behind all sorts of things. Listen, if the Arrow can sail, why have we got a boat that can't? I mean, I used to be proud to be a Manxman. I'm not proud of that boat. She's a thigh veg. It's as simple as that. That's as low as I can call her. I mean, there wasn't one Irish boat cancelled last night. Not one. If you go on their sea list, you'll see that every one of their vessels sailed on time. And we've got this £70 million glass house that can sail when the weather's nice. Get shut. Bring the Ben back.
All right, Eddie, I appreciate
all the bad things, mate.
All right.
And Merry Christmas to all of you.
All right.
But definitely not to the management of the steam pack.
Thanks for calling today. Here's David now with us. Hi, David.
Hi, Andy. Excuse me, just a comment on the steam packet. It's yet another branch of the siege mentality from management. We had it with the bus drivers. We've had it with all sorts of branches of government and business. It seems to be endemic to the Isle of Man. What I can't understand is, I think it was Brian Thompson on this programme 3 weeks ago, he made a comment that the new vessel, the Manxman, was built and designed with accommodation for its crew. Now, why, prior to that stage, was there no consultation with the union, with the management and the workforce as a proposal with, this is what we're going to do, or what, can we have a talk about it? We've got this ludicrous situation now where we're going to get people who potentially could end up getting fired, which would then be constructive dismissal, which would then be an industrial tribunal, and we're going down that rabbit hole again where it could potentially cost a great deal of money to the taxpayers of the Isle of Man. It's a siege mentality of management again. This is what we're doing regardless. Like the wind turbines, this is what we're doing. So I don't know where democracy's gone on over in the island and certain branches of it. It doesn't make sense to me.
So what would be your message to the steam packet, to the bosses, to the chairman, to the managing director?
my message would be you can't alter somebody's contract of employment to such an extent where they'll end up walking away because it's constructive dismissal. You need to sit down around the table. If the two of you can't solve it, go to arbitration. I would think that would be a fair way out. I mean, what's the point of having people staying on board if they're stuck in Douglas Harbour?
All right. I appreciate that. Thanks for calling today.
Okay.
All right, 27 minutes past 12. Have you got any thoughts on this? Do you think this is... Remember, this company has been bought on our behalf. Treasury is the shareholder. It's an arm's-length company. It's un-FOIable. We can't put any freedom of information requests in. It's alongside the Max Development Corporation, so we don't quite know what's going on inside the steam packet company. Now, the bosses say they want to run it as a company. It's to all intents and purposes, it is arm's length, and they want to run it. Remember, it has historically been a cash cow for whoever has owned the Isle of Man Steam Packet Company, whether or not it was Jim Sherwood and Sea Containers, whether that management buyout that happened, funded by Montague Capital, which made millions of pounds for the management buyout at the time. The Macquarie Australian Bank owned it. That South American pension fund and the Bank Espirito Santo, the Holy Ghost owned it, and now we own it, and it makes money. It's a profitable company. So should we let the directors alone? They are professionals. They know what they're doing. The chairman is extremely experienced. The managing director is experienced. They know what they're doing. Do we say, crack on, boys, you make the money? And obviously, we are the shareholders. There will be dividends paid through to Treasury. Or do we get involved? Is it our place to get involved? Or is it not? Have you got any thoughts?
It's good to talk. It's how we get things done. So when you apply for a personal loan from Black Horse, you'll get support from one of our relationship managers who's there to talk you through your application. You could borrow up to £50,000 with up to 7 years to pay it back, and you could receive your money within 24 hours of approval. Ready to talk? Go to blackhorseoffshore.co.uk to request a call back today. Finance subject to status. Applicants must be 18 or over.
70 million workdays lost. A cost of up to £99 billion to the UK economy. Can your business afford to ignore mental health? St John Ambulance have partnered with Mental Health First Aid England in a bid to transform workplace mental health and support staff. We are offering adult mental health first aid training courses to encourage early intervention, helping you recognise the signs and symptoms and guide a person to the right support. Call St John Ambulance on 674 387 today.
Treat your friends with gifts galore. Fa la 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 la.
Buy a new phone this Christmas with a smart unlimited contract from Manx Telecom and walk away with a free present worth up to £299. From an Xbox Series S to AirPods and many more. Spoil someone special or keep it for yourself. Tech the halls this Christmas with Manx Telecom. Terms and conditions apply. Visit mt.im/Christmas for details.
Have you heard the news?
We are number one. We are family run. Mike's Motors. Mike's Motors.
The huge Mike's Motors winter sale is now on, with prices that will warm your heart, a handsome £200 worth of Marks & Spencer's vouchers, and a full tank of fuel with every vehicle sold. Buy now with nothing to pay for 3 months and up to £500 cashback available on all our finance deals. So come on down to Castletown and grab your deal today. T's and C's apply. Mike's Motors is an approved Conister Bank partner.
Hello, I'm Mark Tiley, and this Boxing Night I'm hooking up with Stu Lowe for 3 hours. I'll be here in the Isle of Man, he'll be over there in Canada, and between us we cover 44 years of Manx Radio's history. So what can you expect? Great music, lots of chat, and absolutely no name dropping.
I was in Mick Fleetwood's restaurant in Lahaina in Maui, and it burnt to the ground, and it was one of the best restaurants I've ever been in.
Join him, Stu Lowe, and me, Mark Tiley, this Boxing Night at 6.
The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
29 minutes before 1. Helen, thanks for the note on 127. Family stuck in Lancaster due to no overnight sailing. Eventually they got the option to sail at 1 a.m. Thursday. It's looking doubtful. They've driven from the north of Scotland. So will the boats sail on the 25th on Christmas Day to clear any backlog of passengers? We have more relatives going away for the new year, so everything crossed. It does get emotional this time of the year. The boat sounds fatuous, but I mean it is a boat. It does do cargo and routine things, but this time of the year you're hooked into people's emotions. Traffic is stuck on Athol Street. What's going on? Is everybody panic buying at Tesco, says 924. You may be right. Neil's on now. Hi, Neil.
Hello, Andy. Thank you. I've just come on really to support Eddie. I think he got a very, very bad press yesterday. I think he's done his research very thoroughly, and it all seems factually correct to me. I work in a laboratory, but I honestly think this is an absolute nonsense expecting to run the Isle of Man on wind power. They would have to put several hundred windmills all over the island, which is absolutely going to destroy the views and the entire aspect of the Isle of Man. And we're on about promoting a tourist sector. Who on earth wants to come here to look at that? However, another issue which nobody seems to have thought about in this is water supply. I'm old enough to remember when Airey Reservoir and the Kringle Reservoir serviced the entire south of the Isle of Man. And the water quality, and I've analysed it in our laboratory, the water quality from both reservoirs is absolutely some of the best the island can produce. It's down to about 45 or 46 microsiemens, which is exceptionally good quality water. Although, to be fair, the faulty well water is coming in around 89 or 90 microsiemens, so it's still relatively good. However, if we start churning up the catchment area above the Airey Reservoir, the fact that the government is proposing to bring in thousands more people, which I personally think is an entirely flawed argument, to be frank. The real issue is we may very well have to recommission the Kringle Reservoir and Airey Staine. And if the catchment area is going to be polluted with plastic matter, concrete debris, etc., then we are going to be short of water. I think it's an absolute. I don't think this has really been thought through at all, to be frank.
So, I mean, do you think that this is the thin end of the wedge? If this wind farm goes up in the south at Airey Staine, that's just the start?
It is just the start, and I think there are huge commercial vested interests for a minority of wealthy people who just stand and want to make a substantial amount of money out of these projects. I don't think it's been thought through at all. I think the cheapest option would actually just be to tap into the UK supply, and hopefully they will go nuclear, because nuclear is the only possible green method of producing energy which has any form of sustainability, in my view. And let's just tap into the English or the Scottish lines, and let's forget about this millions and millions of infrastructure costs, which it's going to do, and you don't think countryside at the same time.
You don't think that makes us a hostage to fortune if we just rely on the UK?
Well, we're a hostage to fortune anyway in regard to many things. We're a hostage to fortune when it comes to defence. You know, I mean, we can't defend ourselves if heaven forbid the Chinese or the Russians decided to turn west. We can't defend ourselves. We would rely on the United Kingdom for that. We're much part of a larger group. I think it's an absolute nonsense to cover the Isle of Man in windmills. It's just completely unsustainable, and the damage to the environment and the damage to the prospective water supply in the south of the island is, I think, far too big a price to pay. I don't think it's been thought through at all well. But many thanks to Eddie. I think he puts in a very good, valid argument, actually. He's done his research, and I, for one, agree with pretty much everything that he said.
Well, Neil, thanks for raising the question of water, because hitherto nobody's done that before.
No, they don't. And actually, there's very strict criteria around the catchment area on water regarding it can only be grazed by sheep. You can't put cattle on the hills because of runoff from spoil from cattle, etc. And that entire area sources down to the Airey Staine Reservoir and the other side to the Kringle. In fact, the only area of land which is not currently sourced for water in the Isle of Man, bearing in mind the Snaefell and the Central Valley goes into Faulty Will, North Barrule and the catchment area around there goes down to Ballure. The south goes into Kringle and Airy Staine, and the Central Valley, the other end, the Baldwin Valley area, floods down into Clips and Carradoo reservoirs. The only area which cannot be sourced for water is the western side of South Barrule, and there was actually, it's still there, a little tiny reservoir on the Glen Rushen River. However, that was condemned 30 or 40 years ago now, as I recall, by the government laboratory because it was very high in heavy metals such as cadmium, chromium and lead. So the western side of South Barrule cannot be used for water supply at all. It's really to do with the Beckwith vein, which runs from the Foxdale mines, which is a very long lead mine which ran right out under the sea across Glen May. In fact, it was the deepest lead mine in Europe at one time, one of the biggest suppliers. But unfortunately, the soil up there is contaminated with lead and cadmium, and it just runs off through the acidic nature of the soil. So it has to be the eastern side of South Barrule and Airy Staine which are collected. And it's actually excellent water, but I don't think government have thought this through at all. I think there are vested interests. There are business people out there to make a considerable amount of money, and once again we will be left in an absolute mess. I really think so.
Okay, thanks, Neil.
Okay, thanks, Andy. Bye-bye.
All right,
now.
you
Bye-bye.
too. 22 minutes now before 1. A note in from Richard. Dick says, earlier this year, Irish Ferries bought a much bigger ferry, the Oscar Wilde. She's taller, far bigger than the Manxman. She'll carry 2,000 passengers in total and loads of freight across the Irish Sea in any weather. Even with super high sides in a gale, she'll sail with hardly a problem when the Manxman stays in harbour. Maybe the steam packet and the Manxman, instead of the steam packet and the Manxman, we should get Irish Sea ferries to call into Douglas when they're crossing the Irish Sea. And we could turn the Manxman into a hotel, a bit like the Queen Mary. And also a note in from somebody who said they won't be digging deep if the wind turbines are put at Airy Staine. They'll be piling the ground for the wind turbines. Oh, Bonzo's on now. Hi, Bonzo.
Hello, yes. Well, yes. Eddie and his green thought for the week, and then listening to Neil. Again, it shows how much sort of misinformation has actually really sort of permeated into the consciousness by just being repeated again and again and again. Neil, for example, seems to think that this is the thin end of the wedge and the Isle of Man will become a forest of wind turbines. Nobody is proposing that. Nobody's proposing that whatsoever. So, as I said before, yesterday, 70% of the viable sites for wind turbines can't be built on anyway because they're heathland and they're protected under the Climate Change Act. So that's a non-starter. When we're talking about Airy Staine and Scard, the idea that the woodland there is somehow temperate rainforest, I think is stretching the definition a few light years or so. And then Eddie comes out with these figures of 900,000 tons of concrete will be needed for the wind farm. I don't know where he's managed to find that kind of idea from, because I quote from the Brookhaven National Laboratory of America, which is the U.S. Authority on Construction. Sustainable concrete for wind turbine. How many tons of concrete are in a wind turbine foundation? According to their report, wind turbine foundations consume between 243 to 400 tons of concrete per megawatt installed, which means a typical wind turbine at that time, 2.5 megawatt turbine, require between 600,000 tons of concrete. So going up to the largest option of the 5 megawatt turbine, four of those each, that would infer that it will be 8,000 to 10,000 tons of concrete, which isn't 900,000. So Lord only knows where he gets these ideas from. And the depth of the concrete base necessary for a 1 megawatt turbine, a slab foundation, would be approximately 15 metres diameter and 3.5 metres deep. Okay, so for a 5 megawatt turbine, you're probably talking about 8 metres, maybe, And then, of course, there are pilings, but you could use the pilings and then use the not quite so deep slab. So again, these ideas that it's going to produce all this scarring and waste and such, I'm afraid it doesn't really gel with reality. As for Neil's comments on water supply and how that might affect the expansion of water supply resources, of course, this project is being run by Manx Utilities, who, of course, supply water. So those things must have been taken into consideration, or indeed will be taken into consideration, with the environmental impact assessment. And, of course, because it's being run by MUA, it's not a question of vested interests making loads of money out of it, because it's a public sector project. So, you see, again, if people keep repeating these pieces of misinformation, which have then sort of, as I say, sort of permeated the public consciousness, it's like Trump saying that, the election was stolen, the election was stolen, the election was stolen from us. And now that the Colorado courts have said that he can't be on the primary ballot, well, he must think that Christmas has come early, because now he can say, look what they've done. This shows that they stole the election last time. And this is, as I say, this kind of repetition of misinformation affects loads of policy. You have it with issues with the Manxmen as well. The use of opinion as fact. Well, yes, people are entitled to their opinions, but some opinions are more valuable because they are fact. The moon is not made out of green cheese. Elvis has definitely left the building, and the world is indeed not disc-shaped.
So do you think this may be filtering down from the fact that there's a lack of trust in the way that government handles projects? And, if the government if the DOI can't get a sea terminal in the Mersey right and within budget and on time, that putting something up as permanent as impressive as a wind turbine or 2 or 3 wind turbines, that people are entitled to feel a little uneasy about government's hand on the tiller.
Well, yes. I mean, this disconnect between government and its electorate has been going on for quite some time. And yes, I think given the record of things like Liverpool Ferry Terminal and the Promenade, etc., yes, that does lead people to doubt the competence of government on these projects, and so be resistant to projects which make much more sense, or indeed actually make sense, than those that were rather more sort of grandiose and wishful thinking that escalated into complete lunacy.
Do you perceive this, the proposed wind farm in the south, do you perceive it as any sort of leap of faith, or is this just a natural progression for us?
No, I don't see it as a leap of faith. I see it as a commercial decision. Because, as I've said before, using the electricity generated by the wind turbines then allows you to throttle back the turbines at full raise and save money on the gas, so that then that wind turbine array pays for itself quite quickly in the savings that it makes, and in doing so in that period actually stops prices going up. And then, as that's been paid for, those savings can then start to come back to the consumer in lower prices.
OK. All right, Bonzo, appreciate it. Thanks for calling.
Okay, then, cheers. Bye.
It's 1:45 on Manx Radio. Andrew's with us now. Hi, Andrew.
Hi, Andy and listeners. Good day to you. I just felt I had to phone in after hearing Eddie. I'll just come to that in a moment, if I may, please. Firstly, the arrow, which was mentioned, perhaps one of your listeners who's a naval architect or something like that will be able to come on and tell us what the actual tolerances are for the arrow sailing in bad weather. So let's hope somebody can answer that question. But back to I'll call it what it is, false news. Eddie and his 400,000 tonnes, which Bonzo I completely agree with, because I heard that figure. I used Google, and you can quite easily find that information and work out what a 300-foot wind pylon needs to secure it. And it's not the figures that Eddie is talking about. That's completely false.
How much is it?
And then, I'm sorry, Andy, I don't have it here because I have to switch devices, so I don't have it in front of me now. But I pretty much agree with Bonzo. It was somewhere in those ballpark figures that Bonzo was talking about.
Okay.
Nothing like what Eddie is talking about. That's completely false. Who knows where he's got it from? But I'm with Bonzo and his calculations, his information. Secondly, was Neil there, and I'm a bit disappointed you didn't stop him when he said, cover the island in windmills. Completely, again, as Bonzo was saying, completely false narrative. So it's just a matter of fact-checking sometimes what these callers come on and say, because it is false. So I'll leave that
Okay, I mean, just going back to when people talk about covering the island in windmills, that's perception. I mean, to some people, if you could see a wind turbine, anywhere you went, let's just say 10 wind turbines went up, you could see them from just about anywhere you were on. You could see one from just about anywhere you were on the Isle of Man. Now, to some people, that's covering the Isle of Man.
Small-minded people. I mean, they need to just travel across to England or the continent and see how many wind turbines there are.
Oh, I mean, yes. I mean, certainly in places like Germany, you can't move 20 kilometres without bumping into one.
Exactly. I mean, all this, it's scaremongering, false news and a false narrative, and agreeing with Bonzo, these people have got some other agenda. And these people are in the same camp as Donald Trump and his supporters.
All right.
Pushing some narrative that doesn't exist.
I appreciate it. Thanks for calling today.
Cheers now.
Good to hear from you. 12 minutes before 1. The problem with somebody's talking about the issue with the boat sailing, it's not just the weather, it's having passengers on board. Certainly there are some vessels that would go otherwise if there weren't any passengers on board, so perhaps it's an insurance issue. And perhaps the steam packet doesn't go with passengers on board because while the freight wouldn't moan about it, passengers would complain about being tossed hither and thither. But there you are. We've all got tales about having been on, and my favourite used to be the Lady of Man, seemingly, and the lady would go in anything. I used to get a bit hairy down if you were downstairs right in the bottom, or maybe in the old Lady of Man cinema when the boat was doing a pitch and a roll. But we've all got tales, haven't we? So more thoughts on this. Text, email, call and WhatsApp. Look at that time, 11 minutes before 1.
Conventional wisdom says that it's all downhill from here is a bad thing. Well, we politely disagree. We've moved our friendly branch team down the hill to the Santander Work Cafe at Market Hall on North Quay. So in addition to the great new location, you can use all the facilities of the Work Cafe and enjoy eats, treats and coffee from our awesome cafe partners Noah. We've also extended our opening hours to 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. every weekday. Now that's what we call a great move. Santander International is the trading name of Santander Financial Services PLC, Isle of Man branch, and is regulated by the Isle of Man Financial Services Authority. See santanderinternational.co.uk.
Unwrap the ultimate Apple bundle this Christmas with Shaw. Get all your favourites this festive season for £39 per month. Our great value offer includes the iPhone SE, iPad and Apple Watch. Get yours today. Visit us in store or online at shaw.com. T's and C's apply.
With Crossroads Furniture Commission Service, our home interiors store will collect customers' unwanted furniture and sell it on their behalf. Following a sale, the customer receives 60% of the sale price, with the remaining 40% being donated to Crossroads. If you have quality furniture to sell and benefit Crossroads, then arrange a collection. Call 611 363 or email furniture@crossroadsiom.org. Terms and conditions apply.
Save over a third on festive centrepiece joints at ShopRite. An easy-to-carve turkey breast joint that's a delicious alternative to a whole bird, now only £3 per pound. Or a succulent unsmoked boneless Danish gammon joint, just £2.70 per pound. Roast, glaze or slow cook for a delicious crowd pleaser. How about a rind-on pork loin joint for the crispiest crackling at only £2.25 per pound? Can't make up your mind? Why not buy all three? Festive meat savers now in at ShopRite.
The winning is well and truly underway with Manx Radio's 12 Days of Christmas. We've already given away a treatment for two at King's Spa, a voucher for Ellen Van in Fuels and £100 to spend at Haldane Fisher.
Between now and Christmas Eve, we have a huge prize to give away every day. All you need to do is listen for your cue to call and join us live on the air to answer a simple seasonal question.
Manx Radio's 12 Days of Christmas, brought to you by SpectrumWindows.im.
Keep listening for your chance to win this festive season.
This is the Isle of Man talking, the Mannin Line.
Thanks to texter owner 490, just said, we need to know the reason the Ben's in dry dock at this time of year. This maintenance should have been delayed till January. It was first in Belfast and we... so why has it been moved to Liverpool? There's a hole in the side. When she went to Belfast, apparently there was some sort of... altercation, something happened, and there's a hole in the side of the... with regard to the water on the Isle of Man, says Les on 715, we have two filtration plants, one in Douglas, which is fed by Baldwin, and the two smaller ones at Onken. The other one in Sulby is fed solely by the Sulby Reservoir. Juan's with us now. Hi, Juan.
There's a hole in my ferry, dear Liza, dear Liza. Yeah. I believe the Green Party had a meeting last night, Andy, and it was decided, unfortunately, that from 2025, reindeers have been banned because they're farting too much. So from 2025, all sleighs delivering presents have got to be EVs.
Now, did you find that on the internet, or were you there personally?
Eddie told me. And I was Bonzo last week said, I think in one comment, I think it was Wednesday last week, and listening on playback, words fail me, I think he said when he was making some comment. And all I can say is, Bonzo, that would be a Christmas present to us all. You know, if only words failed you, that would be a Christmas present. Now, yeah, I know they're taking Eddie to pieces there, and I know he made a mistake. I heard that on the playback, and you can quite clearly see that. I don't know where that came from. I think maybe it was an overall tonnage that he got. There was a mistake there. But I look at some of the stuff that I've put on here this year, well, the last couple of years, and if anyone takes the interest, the stuff, the actual facts, the people who are talking about this stuff are actually there to be seen. They're just not on mainstream media. And hence why people get all upset, because they can't be bothered going and searching for the stuff themselves. And, you know, I asked Alf Cannon last week who his priorities were with. Were they with the people of the Isle of Man, or were they with the so-called leaders of the world these days, which is, like it or not, the WEF? And if you study what these people are doing, it's now coming into play. I mean, there's just been a report this morning that the Isle of Man are starting to do digital IDs for alcohol. So when people criticise the likes of me and Julian for the stuff that we produce, it's factual, and it's happening, and it's coming down the line. And it worries me, like when yesterday we spoke, or day before we spoke with Theresa Cope, and Julian posed a question to her about the pandemic treaty, and she really didn't have a clue about it. And this stuff is going to affect every man, child on this island, as well as everywhere else in the world.
Well, I don't think she didn't have a clue about it. What she said was that that's a political decision, and that will be DHSC. Manx Care's just the operational arm.
She did, but she did ask Julian to elaborate on it, which suggests to me that she didn't know very much about what was happening. And that's my point. This stuff is happening, and while everyone's attention is being diverted on stuff, this stuff is happening. CDCs is happening, and when I said about people spending cash, which is so important to try and keep cash going, and I've said that about the Bristol pound and trying to relate it to the Isle of Man, this stuff is on its way. And if people don't stand up and complain about it to their local politicians and make it heard that they don't want this stuff, it is going to happen. And that's the problem. If you want digital tokens, which is what they want, rather than cash that you can spend freely, then that's what's going to happen. I can hear the music, Andy.
Just tell me you're not a Bitcoin millionaire, Joan, would you?
If only, Andy. If only. Happy Christmas to you all. Happy Christmas, Andy. Have a healthy one and a good New Year.
Good to hear from you. Thanks, Stuart. We're back with an open line tomorrow. Actually, there's one on Thursday tomorrow. There's one on Friday, and then we're off until the new year. So make the most of the open line tomorrow. Coming up in the new year, we're actually talking to the head of the Green Party in February. The new head of the Green Party is Lamara Crane. She'll be on in February, and former MHK Martin Perkins, amongst many other people in the new year. Thanks to Chris Quirk on the phone today. Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday.
WINT